Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first PFA General Meeting of 2023. It's a joint meeting with the Saxe PTC, so welcome to all the Saxe families who made their way over to this side of Farm Road for our meeting. Before we get started with Dr. Luizzi's presentation, I have a quick order of business. I have to approve the minutes from our last general meeting. So may I have a motion to approve the general meeting minutes from November 9th, 2022 meeting? Patty, can I get a second? Sarah, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the motion's passed. Now I'd like to introduce co-president of the Saxe PTC, Elizabeth DeMuth.
Hello. Very nice to be at such a distance from our home birth here. I also have a quick order of business, also approving minutes. So from our welcome back coffee back in September, I'd like to take a quick vote to approve those minutes. Thank you, Sarah. I'll take that as a first. And Jessica, I've got a second. Can I get a motion to approve? Excellent. And then I have two quick things for calendars. The first, and this also goes to our high school colleagues here, we are having a kids menu talk. It's being run by NC Cares at Saxe. It's on January 19th at 7 o'clock. And they're bringing in someone from the Yale School of Medicine, as well as Officer Deek, who everybody knows from New Canaan High School, but also late of Saxe, to talk about substance abuse. It's definitely open for kids, so bring your kids. And then the other one for your calendars is on February 9th. Amanda Craig, who's a local author, is going to come speak to Saxe. But anybody else who wants to come, I promise I'll keep the general meeting part like this short. About her book, Who Are You and What Have You Done with My Kid? Which I think is a terrific question most of us are asking about our teenagers. So anyway, two quick things for your calendar. And I'd like to introduce Principal Egan from the high school.
Well, thank you, guys. It's always great to have our Saxe friends here at the high school. This is a tremendous opportunity, I think, for everybody to learn a little bit about the budget. Dr. Luizzi always does a great job with that. I will say that this is kind of a bad news, good news scenario. The bad news being I did not win Mega Millions last night. The good news, neither did any of you. So, but at that point, I just have to pay attention to the budget, and Dr. Luizzi is here to do his normal, awesome job and share the budget with everyone. So, Bryan, take over. Thanks.
Good morning. Thank you for coming out and finding a parking spot and joining us this morning here. I'll begin just simply by saying, I think on Monday you should have received an email about the app that we are launching, and I promised Michelle, is Michelle here? I don't see her. Well, I'll do it anyway. I promised Michelle that I would put the QR code up that I figured out how to make yesterday morning. And if you haven't downloaded the app yet, please go ahead and do that when you get a chance. It's something that we just were rolling out. It's connected to our website. As you know, we rolled out a new website about 2-3 months ago, and that's working very well. And what Michelle Schneider has been able to do, she's our webmaster and social media person, and it's funny when people talk to her, say, well, have your team do this, and I always laugh and say, she is the team. Like, she does all of it. But she got the website up and going and put that out, and now she's transitioning into releasing the app. And what we'll be able to do is, as we update the website, the information will flow through to the app so that you're able to get it in the mobile instead of having to be in front of a computer or whatever. And one of the things she did was go to the hosting company and ask them what pages are most frequently accessed at each of the buildings. And then she's customized the app so that those are the links that'll be there when you go to West, you go to the high school, you go to Saxe, you go to wherever. So when you register in the app, when you first download it, you can select the schools that you want to get the information from, and it'll be customized to you. So if you have one child at Saxe, you just do Saxe. You have both Saxe and the high school, you can do both. Of course, I always encourage you to also do the district so you can learn about the stuff we're doing, but I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, because the Board of Ed meetings are much less interesting most of the time than the hockey games and the other things that are going on in the schools. So, but hopefully you find it useful and interesting and helpful. We're going to be pushing things out from time to time, trying not to overwhelm anybody, but use it as a way to just kind of push more information out. So We had, after that, we had about 120 people that had downloaded it last week. And after the email that went out on Monday, we had a little over 1,000. So that's not bad. So app announcement 1 worked pretty well. 2 is coming. All right, well, thank you again for coming out. I know the budget is not not always the most interesting thing to sit and to learn about, so I will move through this as quickly as I know how. You're welcome to stop me if you have any questions or thoughts or concerns or anything, any jokes you'd like to tell, whatever it is. But I do appreciate you being here because I know it's important for me to have a chance to share with you, for you to be able to learn and speak to the district a little bit on this level. And I know that it is, again, less exciting than all of the amazing things that our kids are doing each and every day in their classrooms. But those things can't happen without the resources that it takes for those things to run. And that's why, as superintendent, I take my responsibility in developing the budget and then advocating for it and explaining it to people. I take that very, very seriously because school districts they're like cruise ships. They are large boats moving down the ocean, and it takes a lot to change that momentum with a district budget. So we can take that for granted, and you never want to do that because really, as you'll see, everything that we build into the budget is really thoughtfully and strategically done for the benefit of kids. All of what we do is focused on those outcomes for kids in the classrooms and their experience. And we think about the children from the minute they either get on the bus or arrive in the parking lot, whatever it's going to be. We pick them up from the moment they arrive to us to the moment they get back to your house. We've got to think about how do we maximize the quality and the value in that experience? How do we keep them safe? How do we keep them engaged? How do we make sure that all of what they experience through the course of their day in our schools is positive and helps them to continue to grow and learn? It's a big responsibility with 4,100 or so kids that come in. And we also develop a budget it's not just K-12. One of the things people don't think about often, but we do is we're developing all the other programs that are additive to the experience for kids. We've got our K-12 program for sure, but we run a preschool over at West that you may know about, may not know about. It's a mandated program from the state. It's for students who have special education needs. They're generally, some of them are in birth to 3 in the first couple of years of their lives, and then they transition to us. But others also might just have a simple speech language delay or other things like that. So those students become eligible for our preschool, and then the state mandates that we try to keep a 50-50 ratio between kids who need services and what they call typicals, kids that don't. So we've got about 52 students right now in a preschool that we run every day over at West. And you'll see the budget kind of invests in that a little bit. We also, more relevant to the high school, middle school level, we have our alternative program at 39 Locust that we run that has about 14 students or so, a couple of staff members. And then we have our launch program, which is for students. Those are some of the same students that may have been in the preschool and the birth to 3 who need additional services from graduation at 18 up till they're 22 years old. All these different programs fall under the umbrella of the school district budget and the school district responsibility, and we have to plan for all of those things. So in doing that, Erica, thank you. Erica's a glutton for punishment. This is the 3rd budget presentation that she's been to in just as many days, which means it's also the 3rd time I've done it, so I apologize if I skip or repeat or whatever, but Erica will tell you when the good parts come. But I want to thank the Board of Ed and certainly the district administrators. And many of you know Tracy Haberman. She's our budget director downtown. If you've had donations or other paperwork things, you've worked with Tracy most likely. She has been a rock star throughout all of this. And I know that sometimes she can make you a little nuts because she's really careful about crossing your T's and dotting your I's and getting everything exactly right, which is exactly what I look for in a budget director. So you want to make sure that that level of detail is there, and it is. So Tracy's been great. Sean is new, as you know. He took Joanne Keating's spot. He's doing a great job, but every district does this work differently. So Tracy really had to step up, and she did a great job. And of course, Jill, Bill, and Darlene round out the cabinet. Our principals do a lot of this work. We talk about top down, bottom up. I'm sorry if I talk fast, but I don't know. We talk together as a team, and then we send everybody out to meet with the people that they supervise and the teachers and everybody that's in the system, and then they come back up with the feedback and the comments that they bring to us. Essentially, My belief and the belief in the system is the decisions about the work are best made at the level at which the work is done. So it's not up to me to sit in a locked office for 3 weeks and build a budget and say, now go do it. But instead, we're having these meetings. So the meetings start in October. We're meeting with the tech implementers. We're meeting with our teachers. We're meeting with our facility staff. We're meeting with everybody at each of the different levels. And then that information gets aggregated, comes back to us in November. We put the budget together at the end of November. Then we're working to fine-tune it through December. We work with the Board of Ed at a budget workshop. And then we work through the holidays. And here it is. So in some ways, it's hard to believe that we're just sort of getting out of the starting gate here because we've been working on it since October. And you'll see it goes right through till April before we're done. So then we take a few months off and get started again in the next October and continue in the whole cycle. But in saying all of that, I want to thank Dave and Bill for sure. I want to thank all of our principals do an amazing job with this. But we also have what we call cost center managers. Those are the people that run their programs, like a Jay Egan, like an Alan Sneath, Matt Salvestrini in technology, Ian McHugh in the hardware, software stuff. So we've got these different people that run what we call cost centers in the budget, and then the folks that report directly to them. You see, it's very, very complex, lots of moving parts. And so how do you bring meaning to all of this? You start with your mission, vision, values, and goals, right? Because otherwise you're really just looking at operational costs and not thinking about it in terms of the outcomes, the driver, what we're really doing this for. So we use our district goals around that. We've had 5 steady, consistent goals for the last, 15 years or so. And they can be broken up. There are 5 large categories. We say they're not in order of importance, but they kind of are, because the first one is the most important, because that's our student learning outcome goal, right? So it's all around student learning and the outcomes we see. It's around communication. It's around instructional quality, school climate and safety, and the last one is stewardship. So under those overarching goals, we've got several indicators and outcomes that we drive towards each year. The indicators adjust based on where we are. You're typically on a continuum, but those 5 goals keep us grounded in what's most important. So that informs the work that we do. And I like to start with sort of a return on investment, thinking about, we gave you $98 million last year. What'd you do with it? I could go on and on and on about that. This is the only slide where I do that here because you're well aware of what we do with it. The Board of Finance will have about half an hour of this. But this change in school start times, right? Only took us about 5 years to get there, but now that we are, we're really proud of the results and what's happened. And it was really a whole systems change when you think about it. Everybody's time changed, all the families, all the staff, everybody involved. And we've all heard the horror stories about districts that have done it and had to go back. One right next to us, as a matter of fact, a year ago. That definitely sort of chilled my blood a bit when I heard what happened. So we were very careful about kind of all of the details and putting it all together. But for the most part, the feedback has been positive. I've been meeting with our teachers that are new to the district this year at each of the different buildings, getting their feedback. It's been positive. I've been talking with parents and some kids here and there and other things. So there's always room for improvement. If there wasn't, a lot of us wouldn't have jobs because we would just let things go exactly the way they always do. So we'll find ways to continue to improve, but I really do believe that it was worth the effort. A wise person told me that their experience in the morning is it's sort of that half an hour takes the edge off for their kids in the morning as they're preparing to come into class. And that's, at the end of the day, we wanted it to be an iterative improvement. We weren't looking to make some kind of disruptive transformational change. So as the goal or the outcome we're driving for, seemed to have worked very well. And I have this little stock photo here as a reminder to say, and we met one of our most important goals, which was to make sure no child is picked up in the dark and no child is brought home at the end of the day in the dark. And we've done that, right? We've been able to meet that really important goal when we think that prior to the change, we had students waiting at the bus at 6:28 in the morning. And more than one, this is around the district. And now nobody's getting on the bus before 7:05 or so. And that's a really big change for those kids. So I go on and on, but I won't. The results or the external indicator of success. We talk about niche, we look at the other ranking systems, and I was the principal of the high school here and another high school before becoming superintendent, and I've never liked ranking systems. I always rankle against them. I think that they try to take a very complex organization and break it down in just a couple of narrow metrics, and it just doesn't work well. But that being said, if you're going to look at them, this is one of the better ones because they do try to be more broad. Like the U.S. News and World Reports, I know it's gotten better, but back when this all started, they used to look at one single metric to rank schools. And then, the only people who really benefited from that were the ones who gave the test and profited from the test. That was the one narrow metric that they used to rank schools. So I shy away from most of them. But if we're going to talk something, this one's good. We also tend to do well on this, so that's why I talk about it. But there are some certainly highlights here to note. The number 21, the 21st best school district in the country out of 10,751 districts. That's not so bad, right? And you can see some of the other things here. And of course, Connecticut is considered one of the strongest states in terms of education. So whether you're number one, number two, as these things move back and forth, that's not the fight, right? It's sort of the big picture and things happening. But really, our schools, our work, our outcomes stand up very well by comparison. So the budget itself, that helps. It's funny, there's actually a story of one of my colleagues not too many years ago. She's since retired, literally standing in front of open houses and otherwise, and asking everyone to write positive reviews on niche in order to improve their ranking. True stories. But I can't help it. See what you do, you throw me off. So I was principal of the high school here 10 years ago. And maybe it was about 11, 12 years ago when this actually happened. The U.S. News and World Report published their ranking. And we did well, but we were, I don't know, at the time it was 14th in the state or something like that. And so I had a meeting scheduled with the Board of Realtors. They came, we were in the auditorium, and prior to the meeting I did a whole bunch of research, and I went in there and they were not thrilled with 14, we were talking about how great everything is and whatever, but I had to explain to them that there's this one single measure that's used to do the ranking. They do all these other things to look at, to decide whether or not you are eligible to be ranked. But then the ranking was, at that time, simply the percentage of students in your senior class who've taken one or more AP tests. And that was it. And literally that just lined it all. It wasn't how they did on the test. It wasn't if they were in the class and didn't take the test. It simply was whether or not. So I did say to the Board of Realtors, you can fix this. Pay for every student to take a test. If you just give me the money right now, I will pay for that. Every student will be tested and will be number one. They didn't bite. But they shouldn't have, because it wasn't what was best for kids. Anyway, that's what I don't like about those ranking systems. It can be that simple. So and they've gotten better since. Anyway, the budget that we're going to look at, lots and lots of sort of competing interests and thoughts and initiatives and things that we have to make decisions on every year. We'd love to do everything all of the time. But what we look to do is really balance, right? We balance what's the highest leverage initiative that we can put in place that will help kids the most. And we balance that with the efficiency, and our responsibility as good stewards of a school district. The times are pretty tight right now. I mean, we all know what inflation is doing. I've had plenty of people say, look, if it's anything below a 7.5%, it's a cut because of the way inflation works. Now, we are fortunate in a school district. We have several long-term contracts, right, with our employee unions, with our transportation contractor and others. So we have some price kind of prices locked in there. But it does impact us. So we've worked really hard to manage that as best we can. We certainly don't want to be standing here talking about an 8% increase. But there are plenty of people who say if it's 8%, it's zero. So those are some of the competing interests. Investing in those things that we believe will yield the best results for children across the board. And that's really front and center to the work that we do. And that includes making sure that our schools remain the safe, welcoming places that they are for everybody. As a district, that's something that we really pride ourselves on. And we, for many years, and we continue to talk about school safety in terms of school climate. right? It's that school safety is really, it's driven, certainly you have to do the things that you have to do. We have campus monitors, we have those other things, but it's really a positive school climate where the children trust the adults to talk with us if they have concerns, if they see things or hear things. That's how we learn the most. And then it's our proactive actions afterwards that keep the schools safe. And we've got an amazing team doing that work between our principals, our assistant principals, our teachers, everybody. We do a lot of training around that, but we again know it's a positive school climate and culture is the single best protection against things, bad things happening in schools. And we do our best around that. The budget proposal itself, again, terrible slide, lots of numbers. You should only have like 3, 4, 5 things maybe on a slide. But you got to dive in somehow. So this is a page right out of the budget book, and the book itself is all available online, and I'll show you that really quickly at the end. But we're looking at overall all-in costs of 4.87% increase, which some people would say a 3% decrease on the inflation number. But the big driver, there are two big drivers here, as all school districts are, which is salaries and benefits, because it takes a lot of people to run a school district, to work with the students. We've got 4,100 students or so. You know, and it's not just the teacher in the classroom. Again, it's the people driving them to school in the morning. It's who's meeting them at the bus at the elementary levels, or where are they going? Who's supervising them during free times? We do some things differently here than most other districts. I'll talk about it in a little bit, but it does add to that salary number a little bit because we believe it's the right way to do things. Our benefits line is as high as it is, in part because there was a reduction in last year's budget to our benefits of $1.3 million. And we've got to make that difference up because we are self-funded insurance plan, and we hold our own internal services fund, it's called, but our own budget for that. And the money in there can carry over year to year. So that was reduced, the operating budget contribution into that last year was reduced by $1.3 million, which in the short term can work to make a budget look good, but in the long term, we've got to fill that gap because the money, that 1.3 doesn't go away, because every year you've got to pay. It's your insurance claims. So when our employees on our plan go to the doctor, go to the insurer, go see the doctor, it then goes through Cigna, who then figures out whatever the calculated rate is, and then they charge us in our internal services fund, and we pay it instead of the insurance company. Right? So Cigna's our administrator, but we actually pay the incurred costs. And there's lots of different mechanisms around protecting the district so it never gets too far out of control and things like that with additional stop-loss insurance. But anyway, again, that's another rabbit hole I can go way, way down, and I won't do that to you because you'll all definitely fall asleep. But that's a big driver in the budget as well. Breaking all of it out, I mean, if you look at benefits and salaries, so the blue and the brown, maroon, whatever it is, it's over 82% of the overall budget. Right? Because again, it's the student experience is driven in large part by the people that are in front of them that are doing whatever they're doing. So that's pretty common in school districts. It usually runs around 80%. We're higher than that at like 82 to 84%, which I'll get into. And then purchase services, which is the third largest object, and this is just one way to kind of look at a budget. That's where we have our transportation costs, so our busing, and our out-of-district placement costs. And we'll get into the number. Transportation is about 4.7 million, out of district's about 4 million or so. Okay? And then some of the other things. So if we take the employee benefit line out and just look at the others without that, we're at a 3.5 budget. And it's good to pull it out in a sense because of what I just said, right? $1.3 million is 1.3% of the overall budget if we're running at $100 million. So it is a big chunk. So if we just take the benefit line out entirely, it's an $85.7 million budget and a 3.51% year-to-year increase, which is driven, again, primarily from those contractual obligations that we have for our employees. And then the benefit line. Okay, that's something I was just fooling around with this morning. Sorry, it's not ready. Not ready for prime time. I'm trying to figure out how do I break out that benefit number so it makes sense, so it's easy to sort of understand when I'm talking about, because it's like a fish in water. We live in this, and I'm trying to, how do I pull myself out enough to explain it so that it's interesting and clear enough so that, whatever, I'll get there. Equally important, so we look at it by object. We also have to look at it by cost center because this tells us, are we overfunding some, underfunding others? Are we keeping the balance that we want? So if you look at east, south, and west, you see that they're pretty equal. And then, of course, Saxe and the high school, I made sure that they were equal before coming here this morning. Yeah. But you see the majority of that money. Now, that doesn't include the benefits. The benefits is right there. So we pull that entire, all of that out, because we don't disaggregate that by building, because it depends upon who is in the plan and what have you. But again, you see the distribution across athletics, VPA, curriculum instruction, special education costs with our program there and facilities. So this has been pretty consistent. Our elementary principals build their budgets together. Dave and Bill like to do them separately and then compete over them. But it all balances out in the end. And I think, again, it speaks to the health of the district across the board. I've been talking about staff a little bit. The biggest driver in staff is the enrollment that we have, student enrollment. And while it will be a long time before impacting here at the middle or high school. Actually, it may have an impact in the middle school, but we'll put that aside for now. If you look, you see consistent enrollment across the board over the last 10 years. So that line to the left is our historical enrollment. And overall, for the last 10 years, we're at about 4,100 students now. We've been as high as 4,210 total. So really within 100 students, give or take, for the last 10 years. And if you look the next couple of years, we continue being consistent at about 4,100. And then in 26, 27, there's a jump. And that jump is in kindergarten and projected to be about 125 students more than we've ever had in kindergarten. It's the question that we're working to answer now. Is this a COVID-related bump, or is it a change in trend? Because these are the children born in 2021. So 2020, 21, 9 months ago, we're all locked down. We're not locked down anymore. Right, so is it going to be a trend, or is it going to be a bump? And so we're working to try to figure that out, because the district's response will be different based upon what we find from there. Because at that level, and again, when you go out past the live births, and that 26, 27 is the last year of live births, you're just projecting, right? You're trying to figure out based on numbers. What they do, though, they do have the actual number of live births to families that are living in New Canaan that had their children in Connecticut. So if you have a child in Connecticut, my secretary just did, my assistant, then that hospital will register the birth through the state, and then the demographers go to the state, get those numbers, and that's part of what they do with their projections. So from there forward, they're just trying to find the trend and identify. Their projection says that it's not a bump, that it is a change in trend. We'll see, again, we'll see if that holds up. It's part math, part guess. Educated guess, you hope, but you don't know for sure. So we'll get another company looking at it, and if they very much disagree, then we'll get a third company to look at it, and then we'll have to make our own decision about what we do. If it's just a bump, that might be more of a temporary solution for that one enormously large grade that would get close to 500 students as they move through. If it's a trend, then we need a more permanent solution. We'll have that conversation. Now, again, it doesn't impact the high school, middle school in the near term, but it will. And we have the good fortune, the middle school, if it's a bump, we have the room based on the work that we've done there. And Bill, here in the high school, we have some options if we needed to flex up to hit a higher number. So we're in pretty good shape in our secondary, but at our elementary, we just wouldn't have room for those kindergartners coming in. So we'll see. And that drives our staffing, of course. We have our class size guidelines that we use. K3 is 16 to 20. 4 through 8 is 20 to 24 students per grade are the guidelines we work towards. And then the high school, it depends upon program and how they do things. And we work hard to stay within those guidelines. I mentioned we do our staffing just a little bit differently than some other places. What we've done through the years is in-source positions that other districts may have outsourced and may have kept outsourcing. Outsourcing was big, 20 years ago. We're all looking at outsourcing all of these services. And we came to realize that we were sacrificing a couple of things, sacrificing quality in some ways. We're sacrificing the relationships, long-term relationships with the people sometimes. And it turned out we were spending more money than we would have been had we insourced. So we've insourced, for instance, our transportation. You see the white Suburbans, the white vans driving all over town. Those drivers work for us directly. That's not a service that we use elsewhere. So we've got the drivers, we have the vans, we replace 3 a year as it goes through. And those are for our special education students that need transportation in district. So sometimes preschoolers or our lunch program, other things, the vans will be used to help them out. We also use them for out-of-district placements when the district, when students have needs that the district can't meet in the district. So in those instances, they might be driving to Milford, they might be driving further, and every day they're doing. So the 21 or so vans that we have do between 70 and 80 trips a day that are transporting students back and forth. So it's a lot. And so every 7 years or so, we replace 3 vans and they cycle out. But it also, if you're just purely looking at the number of people that work for us, it adds about 30 people to the roles, right? So that most districts don't do this. Most don't have it in-house. Most, just about all of them outsource it. And in a conversation with the superintendent upstate just the other day, she was bemoaning the fact she has to pay $125,000 for one student to go to one placement for 180 days. $125,000. So multiply that over the number of outplacements a district might have, what happens? That's why I say insourcing, it's a lot of work, and we have an amazing guy, Roy Walder, amazing person working on it, retired engineer out of IBM, who's just a brilliant guy. I don't know what we'll do if he ever retires. Double his salary and beg him to stay. But he does an amazing job, and the quality of the experience is so much better. So it's the same, it's the drivers that work for us. They know our expectations, they know our community and our families, and it's not unusual for a student to have the same driver for years, in one of these vans. And that's really important, really important. The same goes like for our food service, right? So we don't outsource our food service work anywhere across the board. All those folks work for us. It's another 32, 34 people. So they're New Canaan Public Schools employees. And we don't follow the national school lunch program, so they're able to cook food that people want to eat. And they're really good cooks. Yeah, which also means when something goes wrong, as it did a few years ago, we've got to deal with it immediately, which we did. So it's always at some risk that I mention food service still, but I'll get past that. Same goes with our campus monitors. Again, many districts outsource that to a third party. And they have their own people coming and going. They work for us. Again, they're New Canaan Public Schools employees. They get to know our families. They get to know our schools. And that also, all of this, again, speaks to the culture, I mentioned, right? These are people that they're valued by us. They know us. Some of them think nothing of picking the phone, calling me, calling Bill, calling whatever, having those conversations, and they know they're valued by us. And we want them to know they're valued by us because they're responsible in part for the student experience every day. We don't want to ever outsource that to a third party who doesn't have the same understanding or values or commitment that we do. So that's where, if you're going to compare districts, you really can't compare by the bottom lines. And there's by the number of staff, because many don't insource their food service, their transportation, maintenance. We've got HVAC mechanics, we have electricians, plumbers, carpenters on staff instead of outsourcing. So if something breaks, we send one of our guys to go do it, they'll fix it, and then if it breaks again 2 weeks later, we can bring them in and say, what happened, versus having to keep paying a company to keep sending somebody out to do that work. So they take more pride in their work by doing that. But all of it adds to a little bit of a higher number here, but a lower number in our total costs, and I think a better result in the quality of what they're doing. So when we look across on the staffing, most of the new staffing that's in the budget really relates more to the elementary, to be honest, than it does to our secondary level, although we've got something for Saxe and a little bit for the high school. But we're being pretty consistent across the board. Again, it's our numbers of students are consistent, so numbers here are consistent. What I'd love to see would be us being able to fill every open spot for our teaching assistants and the open spots for some of these that we have FTEs for. The labor market has hit us, as it has everywhere. We've been fortunate, the relationship with our bus company and our bus drivers through DATCO, we haven't struggled with that, knock on wood, in the way that many other districts have. In many districts, there are bus drivers driving two runs per school. So some students are getting there on time. Some students might be getting there 45 minutes later, and they're missing time. And that's happening around us all the time because of shortages in bus drivers. We have not had to work through that, thankfully. Yes? Sure. So this is what's proposed in the '24 budget. So, but we are accelerating, like the campus monitors, the addition of one, we're going to look to accelerate that this year, and then it would continue. But the rest are, should be in the '24. Okay. All right. So the, breaking down just a couple of those things. Again, I'll talk as much as you like, but I know you're middle school, high school here, so the classroom coach is a teacher that would be on special assignment for a short period of time in order to work with the elementary folks. The preschool director, I mentioned that before. We don't have a director of our preschool, so about 50 kids, and it's really managed by Bob Rousseau, who is our special ed director of the 3 elementaries and whatever, and then Jan Murphy, who's our principal over there, and Tricia, who's our assistant principal. It's different. I mean, we're running a preschool is very different than running a K-4 school, and so we want to bring in some expertise around that. I think there's a real opportunity there to expand, especially if we're looking at a kindergarten that's 125 students more. Then those kids, when they hit 3, 4, and 5, are going to be looking for somewhere to go. So if that number holds up and we can get the preschool director in place, I think that we can continue to grow that program and evolve that program a bit. Of course, where is the problem, because we really don't have space for it, but we'll let the preschool director figure that out. Special education, we have a literacy academy that we started at the elementary level. We just started it last year. It's for students who are struggling to read K-1, 2 in our special ed program. And it really uses a very intensive, scientifically based approach to help those students get back on track. And it's the guiding philosophy here is the earlier and the sooner we can remediate those sorts of issues, especially around reading, the sooner we can change the trajectory for those kids, reduce the services that they need as they move through the system, just get them back on track, right? So it takes some investment, but we really do believe the returns are going to be amazing for kids in this. And what we're doing with that coach is she's also working with our general ed teachers across the board. We're using what's called Orton Gillingham. It's a certain program, a certain approach. I get another rabbit hole, but at the end of the day, it's scientifically based approach, which we do use, but it's a type of intervention or a strategy for intervention that focuses on decoding and phonics and a few other things more than we might typically be doing in a general classroom for those students that are struggling to comprehend at their grade level there. So that's one of those long-term investments, right? And you'll see some of the budget is around short-term kinds of things to sort of turn things around right away. Others are really longer-term. So it's sort of like where student intervention one-on-one is sort of a short-term, turn that around right away kind of thing. Coaching is a longer-term, where we're working with the teachers in order to build the capacity. So some is fishing, some is teaching them to fish, and we try to do both. For you folks here, one of the things that the Saxe folks, we're looking at adding a math specialist in. We've had our turnover, certainly, and it can be concentrated in some areas. One of the areas is Saxe and in the mathematics program. Our folks that are there, Bonnie and Christian, are doing an amazing job. But again, there's that balance between intervention for individual student needs and coaching for staff needs. I mentioned I've been going around to the buildings to meet teachers that are new for us and just to talk to them about how things are going. One of the questions I asked them is, what should we be doing more of to help new teachers coming into the district? And they've given some great advice and great feedback. But one consistent theme is more coaching. They want more colleagues, more coaches, to be able to work with them to take the curriculum documents, the UBDs and whatever we call them, take those curriculum documents and to turn them into the lessons and what they're doing with kids. Because many of them have shared that, and most of them are not brand new teachers. Most of them have been coming from another district somewhere else. And they're sharing with me that in their other districts, they all had to be in lockstep. So here's the program that we're going to be using. Here's what you're going to be doing on Tuesday and on Wednesday and on Thursday. And they and their grade level colleagues were all sort of moving along and doing the same thing in the same day. And if an administrator came into their room and they weren't, then they could be in trouble. We don't do it that way, right? Each classroom has its unique character and dynamics, and the students in there have their own unique learning needs and experiences. So what we do is we have the curriculum documents, the UBD documents, that talk about what students should know and be able to do as a result of the lessons in the unit. And it has lots of resources and lots of suggestions, but it doesn't say on Tuesday do this, right? So the teachers are really grateful for the flexibility to adapt the what they're teaching to the needs of the kids that are right in front of them as they're doing it. And that's, when we talk about differentiation, that's what we're talking about. And that runs right through K-12. The other side of that coin is, it's a lot harder, right? It's a lot easier to say, okay, on Tuesday, this says I need to do X, Y, and Z, so go do X, Y, and Z, instead of really looking at the data, looking at your kids, thinking about what should be taught, teaching them, and then assessing, did they learn it, didn't they learn it? All right, these guys did, these guys didn't. What am I going to do with them? You know, and really getting down to the level of the individual needs of each and every student in the classroom. It's a lot of work. It's the right work, but it's a lot. And that's where the coaching comes in. So the coaches can help them to look at the data, to look at the program, and to adapt what they're teaching to the needs of those students that are right in front of them. So it's a gradual release model, right? The coach is teaching them how to do this and with plans to sort of transition away. So it's sort of the coach will do it, and then the teacher will do it with the coach observing, and then they'll get feedback, and then they'll move on to something else. But it really is how we continue to raise the level of instruction across the district. Teaching used to be a very isolating act for adults, and we really work hard to break that down, and this budget does too. So, long explanation, but that's the math specialist role over at Saxe, and we have literacy specialists, math specialists. At the high school, we use our department chairs to do this kind of coaching work. And then the high school, 0.1. So we think of FTEs, we think of positions as 1.0, right? That's a full-time job. A 0.9 would be a 90% job, all of that. We have a great new teacher who we hired this summer. We only had a 0.9 position for that teacher. We don't want him to leave. So we're gonna increase him by 1/10 of a position there, 0.1. And so he'll teach one more class in the one semester class, and our kids will benefit. And then the campus monitor position. As you know, we have a campus monitor at each elementary school. We've got 3 at Saxe and 3 at the high school. One of the 3 at the high school is our supervisor of the campus monitors. And so sort of doing double duty. And we know that a player coach doesn't really work. Michael Jordan taught us that. So what we want to do is replace that position here at the high school with a 1.0 to free that person up so that he can go to all 5 buildings. He can work with the campus monitors at each of the other spots, make sure that they are trained and following the protocols that we have in place, and also to partner more with the administrators and with others, the teachers, run some staff development, things like that. So that's something that we look to accelerate this year and then keep it in the budget going forward. We kind of talked about all that. A couple of other things in the budget worth mentioning, I think, and I think it's all worth mentioning, but some other investments that we're making. We're looking at a school-wide, well, at least not school-wide, but school day PSAT implementation next year at the high school. So every other school district around us has been doing this for a long time. We hadn't. We've kind of resisted. We didn't want to give up an instructional day, but we're feeling like it's the right move to make at this point. So we're looking at doing that. Increasing cybersecurity. I mentioned the outplacements, transportation. We have the good fortune, last year we negotiated our transportation contract. And actually it was the spring of 22, I guess, that we did. And we stuck with DATCO, and we negotiated a 2% increase per year over the next 5 years. 2%. So, and it's a big number, so that matters, right? When I talk to my superintendent colleagues around the region, when they're now in negotiations, they're getting double-digit proposals. So you can imagine the difference between a 2% and a 10% on a $4.7 million budget, right? And talking to DATCO about that, and even in the negotiations, they shared that it really was about how we worked together through the pandemic, that they wanted to make sure they kept our business because we were really good partners with them. As a matter of fact, some of you may have noticed, I don't think any of you probably reached out, that even when we first shut down, the buses were still running, right? And then we were doing that to practice the new school start time runs. And then when we learned of the emotional distress it was causing, we stopped. but we did use our drivers to help out with things. So the DATCO drivers were available all through that shutdown in 2020. And they could come in to help with whatever we needed to help. We needed their help with. So that was a really important thing. And all the other districts, many of them tried not to. They tried to break their contracts. They tried to do other things that really we didn't feel were the right things to do. That's not what partners do in these things. And so we didn't do that. And so that's part of why they felt good about doing negotiating the 2%. So, do well, do good, things come back in positive ways, and this is one of those examples. The transportation, the gate system, I know the gates here at the high school have been a little tricky with the buses and with lots and whatever, so we're going to work to put some money towards some of those. We're increasing this budget increases the funding for club sports by $5,000 and purchases new science lab furniture here. Another example of kind of do well, do good, and things can sort of work out. For the last couple of years, we've been working hard to replace the lights and the electricity in all of the buildings from the fluorescents, whatever, to LEDs. And we just are finishing that work now, and we've on-bill financing, all kinds of things. So in an environment where, all of you may be thinking that your electricity is going to be going up, we keep hearing about these huge increases in electricity, we're actually bringing ours down $100,000 because we have changed out all the lights. We're reducing our usage in a variety of different ways, and we have been able to prepay strategically through the last couple of years for the upgrades for the LEDs and things across the district. So I think we'll be an outlier in this. I think that my house might be going up about $100,000. But our school district, and remembering that we have about 1 million square feet of space across the district. So with our 5 buildings, Saxe Middle School is the largest middle school in the state, typically by enrollment. It's probably by square footage as well, although I haven't checked that. 260,000 square feet. And, it's about 1 million square feet. That's a lot. And so when we're turning on the lights every day, we're turning off the lights every day, we're doing all this stuff, you're talking about $1 million for electricity per year. So managing that number and managing like the transportation number, you see the out-of-district placements is only going up a little bit. Managing those big numbers helps us to ensure that the investments are made in the things that matter the most, which is the instructional core between teacher-student content and the student experience throughout the course of the day. If these get out of control and start running wild, you've got to look for cuts in the other spots, because I can't go to the town with I could, but probably not twice, go to the town with a 10% increase, right? I've got to manage this in a way that it works. So we focus a lot on those operational costs to protect what's most important. And we can't decide not to turn on the lights for a week. Yeah. Sure. Some students are taking it on the weekends and some aren't. So by not doing it during the school day, it's available, I think, on a Saturday, typically, on a Saturday. And we saw that really students weren't taking it all that often. Where 60? 60
kids that generally would have taken it.
Okay. So it's a data point that we can use to help those students as far as, because really they take a test in 8th grade and then they're not assessed again until 11th grade, as they go. So bringing that in helps us to get a clear picture of the entire grade and where those students are to help to inform what we're doing in the classroom versus only having, say, 60 students who take it, on the weekends or what have you. So it's a way to becomes a universal assessment that we can use for feedback around our program and what we're teaching in math and in English. That was the thinking. And it's a pretty reasonable cost to get that richness of data. The PSAT, I think, is that they also align with Khan Academy, do they not? So it also gives students those tools, if they're interested, by taking the assessment, then they break it down pretty granularly, and then they will actually link with Khan Academy where you can go watch the lessons in the areas that you'd like to get stronger. And I think that's a resource that students, you won't know about it unless you take it, and maybe students that would benefit from that are not taking it voluntarily at different times. So. Have you figured out the scheduling of
We
it?
haven't figured out the schedule yet, but it's a shorter administration, so it wouldn't be as long, and there'd still be a schedule on the back end. The SAT is a little longer, although it's going to get a little shorter in the future. But it's definitely shorter. I think it's 2:25 is the village end for the PSAT. Now there's still some extended time to get all that, but it'll be a shorter day, a shorter test followed by a day.
And the grades?
Hopefully grades 9, 10, and 11, they still have to figure that out. And for grade 12, what we're planning on doing is making it a college workshop day for them. So having college essay writing, interview skills, and an opportunity for them if they want to go visit schools, things like that.
Also 9th and 10th graders?
They'll also have a PSAT administration. Still have to work on exactly what's going to happen to get all three, but I think within that budget takes care of all three grades.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, what falls into cybersecurity? Just
Sure, so that is hardware and software. No, it's what's happened is so we have a system where we have, without going down the rabbit hole, but it's user end training that we do. We use a system called Know Before that kind of sends out spoof of phishing emails and things, and then has training videos and things that back that up. So we've got the user end of it, because we know that's the most important part, and then there's the backup strategy that we have, and then there's the firewall through Palo Alto networks that we use to control. So it's kind of those three things that work together. We had prepaid it a few years ago, and now the 3-year cycle's up, so we've got to get back into the annual payments of that. It's actually, we've done, knock on wood, but the strategy has worked pretty well. For instance, our backup strategy is such that it writes the files over, but nothing can execute on that rubric system that we use, which is similar to, I hear from what FBI and others use. I think when school districts get hit, we are attractive targets for folks because generally there's not much of an investment in cybersecurity for school districts, and they can get into financials or others and sort of hold districts hostage. Atlanta was shut down essentially for a period of time. There are other school districts happening every day. So but our system seems to work very well. Glad to talk more about it because kind of a techie, but won't do that to you. Okay. And then there's some smaller things, some other things like the shot clock for the gyms, because starting next year, basketball is on a shot clock, and it's never been on a shot clock before. I've never coached with a shot clock before, so a little different. We also have the Turkey Bowl next year. We're hosting the Turkey Bowl next year. So you see on that other page, if you go back a lot. Keep going, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, just further back. There you go. On the fees line, see the green on the bottom, if you can see that, we're actually going up $46,000. So we're taking in about $46,000 more in fees. 40 plus of that is the Turkey Bowl. So we actually make money. We spend money, but we actually make money on that as we go through. So, and I realize I can skip here. Sorry. So as far as the operating budget, I mean, that's generally lots and lots and lots more, but I will really put you to sleep then. But I'm glad to talk about it at any time, and it is available online. We do also have a capital budget, and there's just a highlight or two that I really want to talk about here, and I think I would be run out of town if I didn't. But one of them is a project certainly that's near and dear to my heart, which is the planetarium project here at the high school, which I'm sure all or most of you know quite a bit about. But I want to start by saying thank you, because the folks who've been working on this have been working so hard. And it's just not an exaggeration for me to say that I have been absolutely stunned by their dedication to this project. Over the summer, people were zooming in from all over the world, South America, Europe, others, to get to these meetings, to talk and to do the planning. As a result, the town, last year's budget request was for $550,000. It was reduced down to $350,000. The group has been fundraising and has hit over 80% now of the goal of $850,000. So the total goal in is $850,000, and they're over 80%. So about $200,000 will make it whole. We're hoping to fill more of that gap between now and then, but I'm planning to go to the town to talk to them about, hey, let's get this across the finish line. Look at the amazing work that this team has done. And when we talk about public-private partnerships, and we do the outdoor learning centers and the things going on around the building, we do these all the time. You do them all the time. But this is of a scale that is really stunning. So the group deserves so much credit and so much praise for what they've done, the fundraising team, and some of them are sitting here in the room. The community, the same, to raise that kind of money in such a short period of time and in this kind of an environment. It's not an easy environment to fundraise right now, and really done a great job. So I'm really excited about bringing this forward to the town to say, let's fill the gap, place the order, and make this happen. We have phase 1 ordered already. And essentially, if you're not aware, just very, very quickly, up on the 3rd floor here in the high school, we have a planetarium. It was put in the early 70s. It's been great for generations of students and all of us, but it's time for a revamp. And the technology, as you can imagine, when you go in there, you're essentially on the set of Star Trek 1, which is great. I love Captain Kirk, but it's one. Like we've had quite a few different Star Treks ever since, and the opportunities are just amazing. We go from what they call dots on a dome to an immersive learning theater, which is why we're moving it from a planetarium, which kind of talks about dots on a dome, to calling it the Dome in New Canaan High School. It's not just for science, not just for astronomy. It's really multidisciplinary. We're looking at developing assured experiences for children of all ages and in all different contents. That's not just a classroom. There are going to be between 60 and 70 seats in the space. So we can bring up 3 elementary school classes at a time to go through and have sort of shared common experiences together. And the content is it's already so amazingly done. It's really the only bound to your imagination, because these projectors overlap in order to create this incredibly high resolution image up there. We're putting new speakers in. Somebody asked me the other day if we'd be doing a Pink Floyd laser show in there. Why not? Why not? You know, I'm thinking like I'll watch a movie up there before I come down for a board meeting. You know, depending on the meeting. You know, I don't know, maybe Rocky 2. So it's a really amazing opportunity for our kids and for our community beyond that. And it's something Sarah knows the number. I think she said about a dozen high schools nationwide have planetariums in them. So we're one of 12 schools across the country. Certainly something that the building committee in the past invested in and made a really wise decision. The story goes, and actually I heard this from the son of the building committee chair at the time, that they had a decision to make between pool or planetarium. And they realized that, hey, there's a pool across the street. Let's do the planetarium. And there's a lot of state funding available for planetariums. So all those things came together and they put this in, and it's been great, but it's time. And it really will. Sometimes people ask, well, what about, the Oculus headsets? Why do we need this when they have that? Difference is those headsets, those are individual experiences. Going up into a theater with 50 other people to experience something together, that's a collective experience, right? That's something that we do. We learn socially. We learn, as human beings together. And so to have that and to experience the awe and the wonder of that in a group, in a guided experience with a teacher there, I think really just opens all kinds of doors. And one of the best parts is it's not only an opportunity for students to view content that someone else has created, but the technology now has advanced enough and the barrier to entry is so low, kids can make their own content and put it up there. So imagine being a 6th grader, having a class come into the Dome and putting your show up there and having your class watch that with you. Imagine, those are transformative experiences for people. Things, and they'll remember them for the rest of their lives. So really amazing opportunities there. And so grateful to the group that's done such a great job, grateful for the town for getting us the seed money, and optimistic that we'll get over that last hurdle for whatever's remaining. And I'm hoping even that we can pull it out of the budget process and I'm hoping they'll just write me a check, say, here you go. But we'll work on that. The sooner we get the order placed, the sooner we get this thing up and running. We've ordered phase 1. Thanks to the group. Now phase 2 is the electronics and the other details we need to make it run. Because, again, I can go on. As you think about it, when you have a dark dome, when it's black, and then there's just pinpoints of light on there in a planetarium, the dome itself matters, but to a degree. When you're actually covering the entire thing with projectors and light as you're traveling around, the dome matters. And when your dome is 50 plus years old and parts of it have been painted and a little bit dented and other things, it doesn't have the same effect as it does when you don't see the dome because it's so well designed and put together. So that's, some of the investment, why it costs what it does. Right? But it's really going to be a special place. I think, I can talk about all of these things, but I won't do that to you. At the end of the day, the facilities request, again, the operating is what it costs to run the district every year. So those are operating costs. The capital investments are longer-term investments that we use to protect or enhance the facility and the other resources that we have, right? So that we keep them separate. We don't sort of aggregate that number, but we'll talk about both of them. So once the Board of Ed adopts the budget as their own, I go to the Board of Selectmen, share both, but their input's on facilities, and then we go to the Board of Finance and the Town Council, and they have input on both. And that's how it works. So between today and April 4th, we'll get this across the finish line, and we'll know where we are in order to plan forward from there. You've been really patient. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions, talk about anything you want. Hi.
I was wondering if you've been in communication with Darien about Chief Krolikowski and the school security system, or I don't know what to call it, that is being explored there?
Sure. Yeah, Alan and I, we talk a couple of times a week, generally. I was a reference for Leon. Gave him a very good reference. I hold him in high esteem. They are taking a slightly different approach. They also don't have the system that we currently have. So our campus monitor system or program has been in place for about 10 years. And when we did that, we put that in place, we made the decision to hire the people directly with us instead of contracting with an outside group for the reasons that we've talked about. In some ways, Alan's building from the ground up because they didn't make that decision back then. So he's looking to bring somebody in to help inform that and to do that work. As far as the specifics of what they do versus us, generally it's not going to be that different in I think most of the key ways. We're supervision at the doors, locking the doors. The key is in school security, in part. The key is to protect the envelope, right? Which is why at the middle school, the elementary schools, those doors are locked, and you're getting buzzed in from the front and only the front. The high school is more challenging, as you know, because of the number of students and because we have open campus, and that is so. There's always that balance between. How much you lock things down, how much you leave them open. And I know Bill and his team and others are talking about it all the time. But yeah, Alan and I talk frequently. We've talked about this. We're just in different places to begin with. So he's looking to build some of the things that we already have in place across our district.
In reading the article, none of that is apparent, so that they just...
Sure.
Thanks.
It's the inside scoop. But I do believe, again, it's certainly, I use the term that I really don't like. There's a conversation about hardening schools, right? And you have that conversation about, we're going to harden our schools and harden our schools. And there's a part of that, again, that's protecting the envelope and doing some other things, certainly. The most important part of all of it is around school climate culture. Do kids have a trusted adult they would go to if they see or feel or hear something that concerns them? If you continue to build that culture in those positive ways, generally you get ahead of things that are happening. But that doesn't, they're complementary, right? So you do what you have to do around the hardening, around the locking, around the protocols, and that's where that additional campus monitor frees up the supervisor to get around to the buildings to be able to make sure that we're following the protocols that are in place. I know it's inconvenient, but when you go into the schools to buzz in, the protocol is that you hit the buzzer and the door doesn't magically open. Actually, a voice comes over the buzzer to say, "Hi, why are you here? Welcome. Why are you coming?" And I know that we were great about this in 2019. Pandemic came and we just didn't answer the buzzer for a while. And now that we're answering the buzzer again, we've got to make sure that those protocols are all being followed.
On the note of safety and the climate, I know the initial read of the climate survey came out a couple months ago, whenever it was, and as expected, it was glowing and wonderful. But there's the piece of it that's of those who aren't happy. So what I found, I don't know when the next, or if there is a next session of reading, okay, is this data statistically valid across all parts, like how many take it versus how many are in schools, and can it be extrapolated out? But also for those who don't fall into the I'm really happy and feel safe and great, is that data then be able to break down whether it's grade, gender, identity, all anonymous, et cetera, so that we can get to the heart of the matter a little deeper. I know there are focus groups too, but those have pluses and minuses of how focus groups actually are representative. So I think as we've had the public discussions about inclusion and all of that, that represents our schools, but also on the climate part, that it's great to know in the majority everybody's really happy and feeling good. It's actually more about those that don't feel good, and how are we getting to either adjusting that survey to be able to get to that data, and addressing those factors.
Sure.
So that's,
Yeah, to the first question, yes, we disaggregate right down to, other than name, we have grade, we have all of those different demographic, whatever, any way that you want to slice that, we get to that data. And the schools are doing exactly that. So at each of the individual schools, and then at a district level, and with Susan Bliss and with the climate team at each place, they've looked at it at those levels for that purpose. They've developed kind of action plans and strategies around that, and improvement plans. You're right, the data is very positive, but there's always room for improvement. Again, that's how we approach this, right? The best way to fail is to stop trying after you succeed, right? So we are continuously doing that level of work. So it's not necessarily what we're going to be talking about at a board meeting, because that's a level of detail that you'd be there for hours and hours and hours. But between faculty meetings and team meetings and other things, they're looking at that data. They're looking at other indicators as well, for instance, like the SAPL indicators on the report cards at the elementary schools, things like that. And they are developing plans and doing things as a result. We just talked even yesterday as a group about how, again, prior to the pandemic, we had been doing the similar kind of work, and student empowerment was at a different place, sort of student engagement and empowerment around this, than we are today, just because we just lost some of that momentum prior. But we're going back there. You know, it just takes time, because you build up those plans and the momentum around the work with kids. So the goal is ultimately that students, and we've been doing this, students work through the data, they put plans in place as well. They've got partners with the teachers who are checks and balances with that, and the work continues. The state mandates that we do the school climate survey every 2 years. So that's what we do. It is pretty expensive. It does take a lot of time. But so we have the rest of this year, next year, we'll continue doing the work. We'll administer it again and look to see the results. Thank you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for coming. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming out, and Happy New Year. Happy 23rd. No, I'm done, Bill. You can go.